Hey, South by East fans, welcome back to the intersection with another traffic report. We're excited to be back with you. Man, John shared this awesome article with me that's going to be in the show description for you guys with Mark Cuban and what it looks like to leave this legacy of generosity. I was really blown away by that, John. Share a little bit with us.
Yeah, and so recently, Mark Cuban sold his majority stake in the Dallas Mavericks. And when he sold his majority stake, 91% of the employees of the company, he turned 91% of the employees into millionaires.
Crazy.
And so,
Wow.
man, so there's two things that stuck out to me,
Yeah.
right? There's two things right off the top before we get into details. One, a lot of people, I'm a Dallas native, and I remember before Mark Cuban took over the Dallas Mavericks, you used to be able to buy $8 and $12 tickets, sometimes $4 tickets, walk all the way down to Reunion Arena in those ugly green and blue seats. That that's how they actually decided on the team colors, because that was the color of the seats in Reunion Arena.
What do you know?
So that's how they decided on it. I remember going to Reunion Arena even to watch soccer games, indoor soccer games as a kid, because they were cheap tickets. But before he bought them, I mean, it was nothing. And then I was still a fan, but the team drastically changed, man, when he took over the team. And he grew this thing, and he, built part of his empire around this. And so a lot of people question, like, why would you ever give up control for this thing that you're famous for? That's one deal. And then the other deal is, man, if you're selling this, how are you making all these people millionaires? And I feel like as a leader, as we discuss in this, we got to bring up how good leaders are looking at not how to keep control, but how to give and increase the size of the platform for as many of the people around them as possible. Great leaders are not only looking at how to build the platform of those who follow them, but how to leave a legacy that lives on of generosity after them. And so I saw those two things just off the top.
Yeah. So one thing I wondered, because I remember having a conversation with somebody about this a long time ago. So you were saying about how you used to go to the stadium, Reunion Arena, and man, it was cheap tickets. It was easy to get in. What happened to them ticket prices as this empire began to be built?
Well, here's the deal that happened. Those ticket prices, they went up.
Yeah.
But if you look at just sports across the spectrum,
Right.
like, man, the industrial sports complex in our country just went up, right? And so part of it was just a function of that. I know, also been a Dallas native. Most people don't know that if you have season tickets in the NFL, they also have these things called seat licenses. So you have to buy not only a season ticket, but if you want the exact same seat, you have to buy a seat license just to have the right to buy your season tickets again for that same seat. And the person who created this whole concept was one by the name of Mr. Jerry Jones, who owns the Dallas Cowboys, which is the most valuable sports franchise in like all the world. It's the whole world. And there's several things he did along the way that just really revolutionized the whole marketing and all those kind of deals. And that really changed the landscape of sports. But we're also seeing people sign contracts that are absolutely outrageous. I think LeBron James has made on his last contract, or this last contract he signed, more than what Michael Jordan made in his whole career, as a basketball player. It's something crazy in there.
Yeah.
Like, don't quote. It's something in there like it's crazy. I saw it. I was like, that's just mind blowing.
Right.
And so with that though, the ticket prices have changed, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things I have consistently seen for Mark Cuban is something that is different. I was around college. I have a college letter. I was around college athletics, so I saw people get treated like meat. I saw it. Most people don't understand that when you get a college scholarship for college athletics, it is a year-to-year scholarship. Even though people think it's a 4-year scholarship, it is not a 4-year scholarship. It has to be renewed every year. And so I know that a team can always say they broke team rules to kick you off scholarship. They can make up a team rule
Right,
that they want
that
you
you
gone.
broke. Yeah.
And I saw that, and so that's why I'm not even hating on the NIL stuff. I do think though, should an 18-year-old have $1 million a year? That's a whole nother
Yeah,
conversation.
that's a whole different conversation.
But I am glad that they're getting compensated. But all that to say this is, I have seen there was Delonte West played for the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah.
Fell into drug addiction. After he was gone from the Mavericks.
Yeah.
After he no longer played for the Mavericks. Mark Cuban saw a story on him being out there. Now, he had played for other teams. He had played for other teams before he played for the Mavericks. And I think after the Mavericks, he played for other teams. But Mark Cuban saw the story, went and got him into rehab, helped him start restoring himself. And and multiple times he went into this thing, and Mark Cuban still went and took care of this guy.
Right.
When he brought no more value to the team that Mark Cuban owned.
And so the part of the reason I asked that question, right? Like, did the ticket prices go up? Sometimes we want a princely presentation, and we want to keep poverty prices. In order to build the type of franchise where you can make people into millionaires, where you have the ability to be generous, there has to be a high quality, and where there's a high quality, there's also a high price. And so I wanted to bring that up too, where it's like, hey man, this stuff ain't for free. It's not that Mark is a bad businessman. He's clearly an excellent business person, and he's using that business acumen to then also be generous with what he does and how he does it.
But he is also a good leader in this way. So when he first got there, you had Steve Nash and Dirk Nowitzki on the Mavericks.
Okay.
He had all these young guys that were young stars, and he saw how they were eating, and he's like, they're eating trash. And I know athletes' main resource is what? Their body.
Right.
So here's what he did. Everyone who wasn't married or who didn't have a meal plan, he had personal chefs start going to their house and doing all their meal prep for them.
Wow.
He made sure that all the players had special robes at their locker. He redid everything to make sure that everything else around them in their life was taken care of. And he created a plan for all these guys that had all this money. He's like, they don't know how to manage all these different things. He took care of all these things. Why? Because we always say this, when anxiety goes up, performance goes down, behavior goes down, motivation goes down.
Right.
And he said, I got to take care of some of these other things. So the only thing on these guys' mind was playing basketball. Showing up for practice, and then showing up for the game and playing basketball. And the Dallas Mavericks have a championship to thank for that we didn't have before. And so he thought about, now a lot of people would say, well, he already paying their salary, they make enough money, he shouldn't have to do this. But he, as a leader and caring about people, saying, these young guys getting this big check, most of their minds are not going to this. And they're not going to change until probably they've wasted the best years of their life. Charles Barkley talked about how in his first couple of years, one time he said he was blessed because he got to play with Moses Malone at the beginning of his career. And he was crying about getting more time and different things of that nature. And Moses Malone was like, man, you fat. And you out of shape. And you ain't, like, this is what you're not doing. And then this is how you handle your money. And Charles Barkley was like, man, that hard conversation is what gave me what I needed to transform my habits so that I became a Hall of Famer and thought of as one of the greatest ever.
Great leaders call people into greatness. They call them into greatness. And because great leaders often demand greatness of themselves, they call other people into greatness around them, and greatness abounds. And when greatness abounds, You can be generous. Because I don't want people to hear this like, oh, I should just be giving away all my money and I should be doing that if you ain't got no money. You got to get some money first. You got to be great first. But even as you're aspiring to that next level of greatness, even as he was aspiring to where he wanted to go with the Mavericks, he was always thinking, how do I bring greatness into my players? So some of the funds that he had, he was like, I'm going to use those to build greatness into the people around me, to give them all the opportunities to be great. And then the sum of those opportunities was what allowed him to then be generous.
And bro, like, this is the other piece of this too. So Mark Cuban first made his money in like the tech industry. But there was a certain amount of dedication and different things of that nature that goes to that. One of the other shows I like watching, and even my kids have talked about it now, is the show Shark Tank.
Which
right?
Mark Cuban was on.
Is on there.
Yeah.
Man, if you see him, he talks to people differently than some of the sharks on there, man. He does.
How so?
Man, with a lot more empathy and care, even when he's not interested in the deal. He still talks to him, like, he still, like, dignifies them in his responses. Also, if you don't realize, Mark Cuban is one of the guys, he started a whole company around getting people reasonably priced prescription drugs. He also, one of his friends was in financial trouble, and he went and bought a whole town just to rescue his friend from financial trouble.
What? Wow.
Yes. He owns a whole town in Texas. He bought the whole town just to rescue one of his friends from financial trouble.
Man.
Life is not a light switch. Most people will talk forever about how they could be generous if they ever won the lottery.
Right.
And I look at it and I was like, no, they wouldn't be. And here's why.
You're not generous now.
Because you're not generous now. Man, when you learn how to care about and pour into others, and that is a part of who you are in your DNA, it will consistently come out of you.
Yep. You'll use what you have where you are.
Where you are.
Where you are. Man, I grew up, I mean, we were not financially well off at all. And I watched my mom all year long have stuff on layaway and a savings account for people for Christmas. All year long. She had that. Every year she got people Christmas gifts because my mom loved to give people good gifts. And my mom was talented in art. And so she would spend her time buying little knickknacks. I cannot tell you how many hours I spent at Hobby Lobby. But she spent a lot of time buying little knickknacks. And then she would put them together and make these art projects for people.
Yeah.
And then when she couldn't give to people, and even if she could, she spent her time being generous with them, talking to them about their problems and walking with them through things and just being that type of person.
Yeah.
And I don't know anyone that knew my mother that was a woman that was younger than her that didn't call her Mama Shell. It was Mama Shell. She took care of everybody. As I got older and got ready to graduate, everybody that came through, almost all of my whole friend group lived in my house.
Bro,
at one point in time.
Growing up, I can remember so many people living with us at different times. I can remember so many meals, so many, like there was a generation of just generosity and how it stretched. And I don't think it's dead. No. I think it changes sometimes how it looks. And I still feel like there's people that are just so overly generous, man. I believe we can do this, and I think that's the important part of realizing is not looking and wishing that we had millions, that we can make everybody around us millionaires, or we can build a family compound or whatever else, but saying, man, how does it look for me to be sacrificially generous in my own life? Mm-hmm. You may remember this when Walmart, like a lot of the truck drivers that were with Walmart at the beginning are all turned into millionaires because Sam Walton gave all of them stock in the company to start off. And so it's one of those deals where it begs the question wherever we're at. I look at it and I say, how would how would it look? I was talking with my group of guys that are in my community group, and I said, man, you can be generous now, and you can leave a legacy of generosity. And I said, I have planned into my estate how I want a piece of that to go to certain places.
Right.
And even though I have kids, I said all of what's left after me, financial resources won't just go to them. Like I got a part that's planned to go to the church. Most people don't even think about that.
Right.
I got a part. There's some organizations I care a lot about that I want parts of that to go to because I believe in their mission. And so I want those things to go there. And so those things are important to me. And it's saying, how do we plan that? But when you start thinking through that lens, I think there's so many more opportunities to be generous. And it's more than just the... I feel like there can be this token generosity sometimes.
What's the token generosity? What do you mean by that?
Or this forced generosity of the Salvation Army kettle is outside of the store at Christmas time. And so
I feel like I got to give. I don't want to be shamed into, because I wasn't the one who contributed.
Or, I'm checking out and this thing is staring at me about rounding up on the change for this bill, right? And I was like, there's a place for that. Yeah. There's a place for those things.
But there's a different type of heart when you're a generous person, and especially when you're a generous leader. I just recently released an album called Work in Process. Y'all check it out. But on the album, there's a song called Crown. And the concept that I'm dealing with in that song, Crown, is servant leadership. Because I saw a great leader that I knew who was generous, just taking a lot of arrows, getting a lot of attacks slung at them on social media and other places. And it made me think about Christ and how Christ had all authority over all creation, was rightfully the king, literally the king of everything. And he said, with everything I have, I'm going to use it to benefit you, to benefit those around me, benefit those in the kingdom and those who might one day become a part of the kingdom, even those who will never be a part of the kingdom. I'm going to use everything I have to be generous.
Yeah.
And he taught that the greatest among you would be a servant, that the first would be last. And that's the type of thing, when we talk about leaders who are generous, that's the type of heart that they have. And you don't have to become a billionaire like Mark Cuban to develop that type of a heart.
Yeah. Leadership is not a position to hold.
Ooh.
It is a service to give.
Service to give. Man. Whew. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Check out that article on Mark Cuban. Check out that album. Man, we'll post this into the show notes so you guys can see that. But let us know what you thought about this. Where have you seen leaders be generous in your life, man? Post, comment, like, subscribe, all of those great things on social media. And we'll see you next week in the intersection.